Brew Strong is brought to you by morebeer.com, where a man can brew like a man.
Brewers, it's time for the beer radio you've been looking for. This is the show that dispels myths, tackles the toughest topics, and makes no apologies for geeking out on beer. Hosted by two guys that drink before they think, Jamil Zainasheff and John Palmer. This is Brew Strong.
Hey, howdy, hey, my brewing brothers and sisters.
Ahoy there, mateys.
Ahoy there, mateys.
Well, maybe SpongeBob
John.
does it better.
It's me, Jamil Zainasheff, and it's my good buddy, John the Rock Palmer, here on Brew Strong at the Brewing Network. Another fine day in the studio, and another fine show sponsored by our great sponsor, morebeer.com. If you get a chance, go by morebeer.com, www.morebeer.com, and they got all sorts of great equipment for your brewing needs.
That's right. There are a bunch of good guys there and great customer service.
Great customer service, yeah. Excellent people, and speaking of excellent people and excellent homebrew shops, after the conference, I went up to loaded up the family and the psychotic dog in the Pope the Pope mobile, and we pointed it north, and we're planning on going to like Canada.
You have that plexiglass bubble on there, like
yes. I stand up there, I got my Pope hat on, and people shoot at me, and they shoot peanuts at me. Yes, and we went up. And our plan was to make it to Canada, but there's so many great brew pubs, waterfalls, lighthouses, parks, just everything in Oregon. Oregon is a beautiful state, great people. We had just a wonderful time. And one thing that happened at the conference was I ran into this guy, Matt, one evening. I think maybe you and I ran him together, and he was talking about how they opened this new homebrew shop. And they were selling our Brewing Classic Styles book, left and right. And he said, everybody who comes in the shop, I tell them, this is the book you need to have. And you can actually get it from the Brewing Network store as well, signed by the authors. And I told him, I said, well, where's your shop located? He said, Klamath Falls, Oregon. I said, well, we're headed up that way for our vacation. And I said, if our travels take us that way, I said, I'll stop by and I'll say hi. It'd be great to, see your shop, and, I can sign books and say hi and things like that. And, he's like, great, gave me his card. And I think, he's figuring, this guy's just like, blowing smoke and saying, yeah. Oh yeah, sure. I'll come by. If things work out, I'll come by. But on our trip back, I mentioned it to my wife, and she's like, "Oh, we need to go through Klamath Falls then." And she's great, and the kids are great. They're all like, "Oh, if there's something you want to see, let's go and do it." So on our way back, we were heading through Klamath Falls, and I emailed Matt there and his father Steve, and I said, I'm going to be there tomorrow in Klamath Falls, and I'd like to stop by and say hi. And I think they were shocked. They're like, hey, this guy actually is going to stop by. He said he would, but we figured he's just being nice. So I stopped by, and how nice were these guys? They got a small shop. They've only been in business a short while, but they went to the trouble of pulling together a stainless steel pot. They filled it with bottles and cans of some of the finest Oregon and outside Oregon commercial beers, and they put in some locally brewed root beer and cream soda for the kids, and they put in a bunch of snacks and stuff for the kids to enjoy. And I got there, they presented me with this thing. They're like, hey, this is for you. We wanted to give you a gift and welcome you and all this. I thought that was really nice. And I'm like, I'll return the pot. After I'm done, I'll load it into the RV. They're like, no, pot's for you too. So, nice stainless steel kettle
Free
there.
pot on top of it?
Not pot, kettle.
Oh. Sorry. Great shop anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And Matt's there. He's one of the guys in my brew club,
right.
Crown of the Valley. And I tell these guys, it's like, really honestly, because I know people in the industry. I know Jamil, and so that's why I introduced you to him. Because the guys in my club, they don't
believe you know me, actually.
Yeah.
You're just faking it to kind of like sidle up to me. Oh yeah.
Yeah. I just think I'm in the upper echelon.
That's right. But it was just wonderful. I stopped by the shop. A few of the customers stopped by. We took some pictures, hung out and chatted a little bit. Signed some books, and then we went over. I took the RV over to the KOA and got that set up, and then we went to Mia and Pia's. It's like a brew pub pizza place. Just fantastic pizza. Met the brewery owner, and then they got like a sampler of 12 beers there. Very difficult to put on and keep 12 beers. We sampled all those. We had a few pints. We talked. A bunch of people showed up, and we sat there and really enjoyed it. And I'll tell you, my family hung out, and it wasn't the most fun for me. Although Mia and Pia's had internet access, so my kids went and got their laptops, and they were fine. But, we hung out and just had a great time, and I love that sort of thing. These guys are the same as me, and, we enjoy talking about the same thing, so it was a lot of fun. I really appreciated that, and them being there and inviting me by and getting a chance to meet people up there. It was a wonderful time. I really, really enjoyed that.
I bet that was, yeah.
Well, and now down to business. Justin, what kind of question do we have for Brew Strong today?
All right, today's an interesting show, and Steve has written in to ask the question about Brew Strong. So here you go, guys.
Hey, Jamil and John, this is Steve from Bangor, Maine. Right now, I'm a Barco Mash brewer, and I'm currently building my MLT to go all green. Think you guys can iron out some questions for me about sparging? I want to understand all my options. So what kind of sparges can I do, and what are the advantages of those sparges? There's some difficult to do and some easier that I can do. Any help would be greatly appreciated. Love the show. Thanks in advance for all the help.
All right. So, let's start off right at the beginning, John. What is sparging? It talks about sparging,
Okay. Sparging, I believe, comes from the German word to sprinkle. And so what you're doing is you're in essence, you're rinsing the grain bed. You're trying to introduce more water on top of the grain bed to rinse retained sugars out of the grain bed and get them to your brew kettle. Typically, if you talk about historic brewing practices, you'll hear terms like first runnings, small beer, second runnings, and when you first drain the wort from your mash tun, that's your first runnings, and you'll have a pretty high gravity, around 1070, 1080, depending on your water to grist ratio. And the types of sparging you can do, you got continuous sparging, where the amount of water you add to the grain bed equals the amount of water that you remove from the grain bed. In equals out. Batch sparging, what you do is you drain the first runnings from the pot, from the mash tun, and then add more water, another, say, 4 gallons of water, fill it back up again, stir it, recirculate, and drain again. That's your second runnings. And then you combine those two worts in your brew kettle. So you're you're sparging in a batch. That's where the term comes from. The third type is no sparge, where you simply use the first runnings from the mash tun to brew your beer. If you're trying to brew a small beer, or like a 1040 or 1050 gravity beer, then you're going to want to dilute those first runnings in your brew kettle, or you can dilute the after the mash is complete, you can dilute the wort in the mash tun and then drain it all to your boil kettle that way to get a lower gravity than 1070. But sparging is all about rinsing of the grain.
Okay. So there's continuous sparging, which other people call, some people call fly sparging, kind of on the fly, where you're going, you're draining it and adding water at the same time in the same rate. And then there's the batch sparging where you drain it all, you add more water, you drain it all again, and then no sparge where you don't do any of that, where you just drain it and then add water to the kettle and to get you to the right gravity. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay, so
that's right.
So how are these difficulty-wise? What's the difference between these? What's the easiest? If I'm just starting out, what should I tackle?
Well, I think most beginning all grain brewers are doing it in a cooler, in a cooler mash lauter tun where they've got a 10-gallon or 15-gallon cooler with a false bottom or a manifold in the bottom of it, and that a cooler is nice because it helps you retain the mash heat, and you conduct your mash. It holds the heat well. You drain out your first runnings. Then you batch sparge with another volume of water. And if you've only got like one burner, you can heat up this extra 4 gallons of water while your mash is going on. Pour it all in at once, stir, recirculate, get the wort homogeneous there, and then drain your second runnings. And that's pretty easy for a beginning home brewer, because they don't have to worry about inflow and outflow rates. They don't have to worry about ladling in a little bit at a time, which is one way to conduct a continuous sparge, using a quart pitcher or something. So I think batch sparging is probably the easiest way to get started, but fly sparging is certainly not difficult.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then which one requires the most equipment as far as that goes?
Well, I think fly sparging requires more equipment. It helps when you're fly sparging to be able to put your hot liquor tank above the mash tun and allow and have a ball valve on the side of the kettle or something so that you can gravity feed water to the top of the mash tun and gravity feed your wort from your mash tun to the boil kettle. That's a lot. You'll see a lot of all grainers have a 3-tier gravity fed system set up like that, or you can use a pump or a brew tree or brew stand, to accomplish much the same thing. But fly sparging really, it works more elegantly if you've got a means to set a flow rate of water into the mash tun and set a flow rate out. Then you can just kind of stand back and monitor it. But it does require additional kettles to do that, and maybe a pump and so on.
Well, and what I have is a pump and then a ball valve and then a float switch that turns the pump on and off and keeps the level of water above the grain bed at a consistent level. And it's great. I set it, I forget it, I walk away. Now,
float switches are nice.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, you don't even need a ball valve. One of my great friends, Dave Sapsis, who taught me a lot about beer appreciation and things like that, he has the most Belgian of equipment. It's like used to be half of a barrel. So it's this wood mash tun with a piece of window screen at the bottom held down by rocks, and then a piece of copper tubing shoved through the side wall, and then a piece of plastic tubing coming off of that. He actually controls the flow out from the mash tun with a binder clip, one of these large binder clips, and uses that to control his flow rate. So it doesn't need to be as complex as a pump or some float switch and all that fancy equipment. It could be something as simple as that. All right, so what we should do is take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll kind of get into more of the equipment and efficiency and things like that. Back after this.
Brew right. Brew smart.
Brew strong.
This is Brew Strong.
That was a good club meeting.
Hey guys.
Yo.
Check this out. I brought some beer for you guys because you've done so much to help my brewing.
Oh, cool, man.
Sweet.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Yeah, give me some
nice. Now, I'm still having some issues with bottling, so some may be a tad overcarbonated.
Dude, just keg. We've been trying to tell you that.
I know, but it's so expensive. My bottling ain't that.
Dude, one of your bottles just blew up.
What?
Everybody run!
Sweet criminy. Looks like I need to start kegging. Fast!
Break free from bottles at More Beer this July. Draft systems, keg taps and quick disconnects, drip trays, faucets, and more. Now's the time to get a great deal on the draft system you've always wanted, or upgrade the one you already have. Get a stout faucet, or just replace all your beer line. Hurry, sale on only through July, and only at morebeer.com.
Downtown Joe's, located in the historic Oberon building in beautiful downtown Napa, California, offers an award-winning brew pub experience from 8:30 a.m. to 1 a.m. every day. For 15 years at the corner of 2nd and Main, Downtown Joe's has been voted Best Night Spot 7 times and Best Brew Pub for the last 4 years in a row. Brewmaster Colin Kaminsky's handcrafted ales, like his Tail Wagon Amber Ale and Double Secret Probation IPA, are the perfect accent to riverside dining, live music, and a relaxing outdoor patio. Don't miss the Beer of the Month, special rotating taps, and the BN Army Members Special. Wear your BN gear, get 10% off your beer. Visit downtownjoes.com to make reservations, peruse their extensive calendar of events, or just read more about their fantastic beers. Come enjoy the fine beer, food, and music. Downtown Joe's, the award-winning brew pub where you'll feel at home.
Organic ingredients. Fresh, clean, good for you, good for the planet. And Seven Bridges has the best selection in the world. Everything is a click away at breworganic.com. Join the mailing list for special deals and regular updates about new products and specials. They have been brewing organic and serving organic brewers for almost 12 years. They can help you brew great organic beer. Check out their huge 11th annual summer sale. Everything organic is on sale until July 15th. Save 10 to 50% on all organic malts, hops, adjuncts, spices, and green coffee for home roasting. Shop early for the best selection and best deals. Seven Bridges is the host and promoter of the National Organic Brewing Challenge, the only BJCP-sanctioned nationwide brewing competition just for organic beers. Take the challenge this fall for a chance to win great prizes, including a hands-on brewing experience at an organic brewery. Seven Bridges. Visit today at breworganic.com.
Hilo, what's it feel like?
Take awesome and multiply it by 2.
Yeah! Spraying live beer radio all over your face.
Can't get any better than this, baby.
It's the Brewing Network. Like the Lance Armstrong of the beer world. Except for that nut thing. This is Brew Strong.
How about that Lance Armstrong, huh?
Yeah, taking another one.
He's doing pretty darn good. Yeah. Even with that nut thing, he's doing all right. That's amazing. All right. And
he needs to drink more beer, probably.
He does, and he wouldn't have a nut problem. It protects you from nut problems, especially homebrew.
And overachievement.
Drinking does?
Yeah, if you put enough time and effort into it.
Right. It's if you're an overachiever at drinking, you're certainly not an overachiever at anything else. All right, so we're talking sparging, and So the difficulty of the various sparging methods, when I learned, I was taught fly sparging, and
yeah, me too.
It seemed pretty easy. Once all you're trying to do is add water at the top without stirring up the grain bed, and let water run out the bottom, or the sugary liquid run out the bottom, and try and do it slowly. And you're trying to match what goes in at the top, what comes out at the bottom, right?
Right. Yeah, we should before we go a whole lot farther, we should mention the recirculation step.
Okay.
Because if people miss that can be annoying.
Why not go through? Let's pick one. Probably a lot of people doing batch sparging because it's just simpler for them, I think, right?
Yeah, I mean, given a lot of people entering with cooler mash tuns and limited pots and so on. Yeah, it's a little easier to start out that way, but it's not a whole lot.
Why don't you walk us through the process, the basic process from start to finish? I mean, at what point do I start? How do I start? When do I start? I mean, at what point I've got this mash sitting there? How do I know it's time to start sparging?
Okay, well, in a very basic sense, you plan on your mash, conducting your mash for about an hour. Half hour is the time range of when the mash is probably done converting the starches to sugars. Hour just gives you a little extra time. Sometimes you can go longer, but usually not necessary. So after about an hour, you're going to want to look at the mash and take smell the mash, look at its clarity, and you should see a wort on top of the grain bed that's it's not cloudy, it's clear, it smells good, it smells sweet.
When it's hazy, it's got a lot of starch in it that hasn't converted over, right?
Right. So after the hour, this is all cleared up. And you can see it and you can smell it.
If you taste it, it's sweet.
Yep, it's worked. The thing is, though, when you start, if you were to start your sparge right away, you're going to get a whole lot of lipids and proteins into the wort that really are not that useful. They tend to promote staling if you don't get some of them out of the wort. So you do a recirculation step where you drain off the first couple of quarts of the mash, and this will be very cloudy wort, filled with the grain particles and a little bit of husk and like I saw, the protein and so on. Pour that back in on top of the grain bed, and do 1, 2, 4 quarts of that, and the wort should be running fairly clear. Now, I don't mean crystal clear. I mean, like apple cider clear. It's not as hazy as it was, in other words. So that's your recirculation step, and what it does is it takes a lot of that extra lipid and extra protein out of the wort. Now you're ready to start draining your mash into the kettle and start your sparge.
So that's kind of setting the grain bed.
Yeah, you set your filter bed. A lot of people, when they start mashing, all grain brewing, they think, I need a really fine sieve to drain, to strain the grain bed to get the wort out, and that's not what it is at all. The grain bed forms its own filter.
Right, all the husk material and all that kind of strains out all those little pieces and parts, right?
Right. So what you're doing when you're doing the recirculation or the Vorloff step is you're setting up that strainer. The false bottom or the manifold that you use underneath the grain bed, all that's doing is just providing a physical separation of the two. The actual straining of it and the clarification of the wort is conducted by the grain bed itself.
Okay. So we've set the grain bed, and we're now ready to sparge?
Yeah, now we're ready to sparge.
Okay.
If you're going to batch sparge...
Yeah, just walk us through batch sparging.
Okay. You should have, somewhere in the neighborhood of 1 1/4 to 2 quarts per pound In metric, that works out to about, well, double those numbers, so about 2.5 to 3 liters per kilogram.
Mm-hmm.
And in that mash,
liquid already in your mash. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So you can drain that out, and the grain bed is going to hold on to about a half quart per pound.
Mm-hmm. And you're draining that into your boil kettle.
Right, and you're draining the first runnings into the boil kettle. The grain bed is going to hold back about a half quart per pound, or about 1 liter per kilogram. And it could be less. These are just round numbers. We're not trying to wring all the liquid out of the grain bed at this point. We're just saying, if you just let it drain, you're going to have about that much left over.
So is there any worry about speed at this point? Should I just throw the valve wide open, or do I need to do it slowly? Or
that depends a lot on your lautering system. And while I don't know that we want to get too deep into lautering systems at this point, a false bottom provides a lot of open area, a lot of suction power, if you will. If you open up the drain valve all the way, you can tend to compact the grain bed because of all the water rushing towards the drain. Mm-hmm. And that is what is known as a stuck sparge. Mm-hmm. When you compact the grain bed, and the wort won't flow. You'll see your outlet just dwindle to a trickle.
You could pour more liquid on the top of the grain, and it just sits there. It won't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Completely stuck shut.
Yeah. So if you have a stuck sparge, what you have to do is close your valves, pour more liquid in, and re-stir the grain bed. Get everything loose again, get it all suspended, and then slowly open your drain valve and do your recirculation step all over again. Mm-hmm. Because you'll have disturbed the grain bed, you'll free up a lot of protein and lipids again. Once you get that straining effect set, now you can start sparging again.
Yeah, start that runoff slow then. Don't just throw that valve wide open. Just kind of trickle it out there, and with some control, huh?
Yeah. Once you got your grain bed set, and you've got a good steady state, or you've got some flow going, you can, depending on your lautering system, you can open up the valve a little more, but and that you'll see the liquid in the grain bed, fall below the top, and just let it drain out. You don't want it to force it out. You want to let all that wort just drain out by gravity, and you want to do it at a rate that's sustainable, that won't cause a stuck sparge. That'll be your first runnings, and you can do the calculations, but you should get out of, let's say, 4 gallons of water going into the mash, and 10 pounds, that's 1 1/4 per pound, 2.5 gallons. So you'll get, is that right? 1.5 gallons. You'll get about 2.5 gallons of wort out for your first runnings. If you're trying to go for a standard 5-gallon batch, you're probably going to want about 6 gallons, or maybe 6.5, 7 gallons of wort in your boil kettle, and so you're going to want to add another 4 gallons of water to the grain bed. Re-stir it up, get it loose again. What you're doing now is you're dissolving the leftover wort that's in the grain bed, dissolving that into the water that you've added, and now you're going to do your recirculation step again, and then drain out this second runnings into your brew pot.
Now, this sparge water that you're adding, is this special in any way? I mean, is it just tap water, run it in there with the hose, or do I need to, what needs to be done to that sparge water before you can use it to rinse the grains, sugar out of the grains?
Well, I'm tempted to spin you a tale of elephants and virgins and so on, but
no, just give us the answer.
Yeah, really, you don't need to do anything. Just get hot tap water, or hot brewing water,
dechlorinated.
Dechlorinated is a really good idea.
And ideally, it's around 170 up to 173 was always the thing I was taught.
Yeah, you don't want it to be boiling hot because then you will run the risk of tannin extraction from the grain husks.
Mm-hmm.
So, hot, but not boiling. 170, 175, that ballpark is good.
Mm-hmm.
You'll add that water, that's your sparge water in. You can pour it in because you're batch sparging, re-stir to get everything, homogenized, recirculate, and drain again, and that's your second runnings. And now you should have 6.5, 7 gallons in your brew pot of wort that is probably about a 75% efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
And you're off and running.
All right, so fly sparging is pretty much the same thing, except you do the recirculation step where you set your grain bed, and then you open the valve and water's coming out, and you just pour in, instead of pouring in all the water at once, you just pour in little amounts of water. You keep like an inch or so on the top of the grain bed, and you just keep the top of the grain bed wet. And it used to be, the theory was, well, you're protecting the grain from oxygen and any sort of oxidation that might produce a staling effect, hot side aeration. And we know from our hot side aeration show that that's really not going to be a problem at all. But people will put like a plate on the top of the grain bed and pour the water on that so it doesn't disturb the grain bed. Really, you can disturb the top if you've got a foot deep grain bed. You can disturb the top 8 inches. It doesn't make a difference. It's just fine. So that's really the only difference now. So it's pretty simple. The thing that I also, you were talking about there, let me get back to that later. But all right, so that's fly sparging. Okay, you described batch, and fly sparging is very similar. You don't have 2 recirculation steps. You don't stir up the grain bed or anything like that in between.
Right.
And then the no sparge is really just batch sparging, again, with adding water directly to the kettle to thin out those runnings, or starting with a looser mash.
Right. You can do it 2 ways, but but you're essentially correct in that the gist of it is that you're only doing the 1 recirculation step and draining first runnings only. Mm-hmm. Now, as I said, depending on your grist ratio, your first runnings are in the neighborhood of 1070 to 1080. And if you're trying to brew a 1050 or a 1040 or 1060 beer, you're going to need to dilute that. And you can do that dilution either before the sparge or after the sparge. Doesn't matter. It all amounts to the same thing, the same volume in the boil kettle. It depends really more on what size cooler you have. If your cooler can accommodate, the extra water up front,
probably get a little more efficiency out of adding the water to the mash.
Yeah.
It's probably a little more efficient. But one of the things that is important about no sparge brewing is the quality of the wort that's coming out is said to be of a higher quality.
It's a little bit richer. Yeah, a little richer flavor.
Mm-hmm.
And as you sparge, you tend to draw out more tannins, more silicates. In some cases, you can call that the graininess, or a grainy character from the beer, in the beer. In other cases, you'll call that an astringency.
Mm-hmm.
Depends on the degree to which you're doing it. But if you try for like 95% efficiency, where you've wrung every last bit of sugar out of a grain bed to get your boil kettle volume and so on, get the maximum efficiency, you're going to notice a grainier, huskier, little drier character in that beer than if you had only tried for, say, 75% efficiency and not wrung every last bit of wort out of the grain bed. You're going to end up with a little richer, mellower beer, a little more rounded character.
Well, it's one of the reasons I always, I target around 70% because I don't want to push it that far, and grain's cheap, and I want the best beer I can make. Here's one question for you. All right, so we talked about when we start, and we talked about the process. How do you know when to stop?
Good question. When you're fly sparging, the old rule of thumb was stop when you're around 10-12 gravity. If you look in Malting and Brewing Science by Briggs et al.,
like 2 to 3 Plato.
Yeah. Even 4 Plato. There's a graph in there that shows that 4 Plato is when, at least in one experiment, this is the kind of key here, one experiment they did where in a graph that they published in Malting and Brewing Science, you see the silicates and the pH rise significantly when you got down to about 4 Plato. 4 Plato being about 10-16 gravity. Now, that's that one data point, or at least that one graph that we're talking about. You can go farther. You can go down to 10-12. You can go down to 10-8. But as I said, the more you sparge, the more of a grainy character you're going to start imparting to the beer. And so, taste what you're brewing and use that knowledge to help you adjust your process. So how do you know when to stop? Well, I try to plan when I'm devising recipes and planning out my beer. I want to hedge my bet. I want to put in more grain. That, like you say, go for a lower overall efficiency, so that I will hit my my boil volume, the target boil volume, before I've exhausted the sugars in the grain bed. I'm going to leave maybe a gallon of good sugar behind, but that's okay. That's a little lower quality wort. It's what they used to call, second or third runnings, small beer, table beer and so on. If we're trying for real beer quality and richness, it's okay to leave those last runnings behind in the mash tun. Right. And so you stop when you get to your target boil volume.
That's the way I do it, and I really like it because you get to a volume, you can see it, you know what the point that is. And there's no measurement other than, maybe with your yardstick, you say, okay, I've reached volume, done. And you don't have to worry about constantly monitoring the runoff or whatever gravity it is. You do it the first few times and ensure yourself that you're high enough up that you're not really pushing it. And then from then on, you don't even have to really worry about it. One thing that I've always done, because I was told that when the pH rises, you tend to extract more tannins. If you keep the pH low, you won't ever extract tannins. So I've always adjusted my sparge water for pH. I use lactic acid, and I adjust it down to about 5.3, and then I use that, and I figure, well, there's really no way that I need to worry about extracting tannins from the sparge. You think that's worthwhile, or am I wasting my time?
Well, it's a good. I mean, the theory is sound. I think it's maybe overkill. But there again, listen to our water shows, the Waterganza, where we talk a little bit about mash pH and how that can change, and adding acid, adding salts to your water. In a mash where we've tuned it and we've planned that recipe to about 70, 75, 80% efficiency, there's going to be enough sugar left behind in the grain that the pH rise isn't going to happen. Where there's enough buffering capacity in that grain bed that a pH rise is usually not a problem. Now, if you have highly carbonate water, or alkaline water as we call it, where the pH of the water is, well, you'll see it around 8.5 or 9. But like we've said, that's a ratio kind of number. pH is an indicator. What you need to look at is the total alkalinity of the water. If the alkalinity is high 150, 200 parts per million, that water will tend to raise the pH of the grain bed as you sparge. So that's when acidification is really justified. If your total alkalinity is less than 150, or say down near 100, then if you plan on 75% efficiency, I don't think you're going to have a problem with pH rise and tannin extraction in your grain bed.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and talking about efficiency, one last quick question before we take another break. Steve was asking what technique would give me the highest efficiency, and what's the highest efficiency I can get from my grains. And again, you don't necessarily want to go for the highest efficiency. That's not necessarily unless you're a commercial brewer and you're worried about the cost of grain per batch and all that, and what you can sell your beer for. For homebrewers, it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But which one of these techniques is supposed to be the most efficient?
Well, fly sparging is the most efficient. And again, it also depends on your lautering system. If you've got a false bottom and you're fly sparging, you can easily get 90% efficiency. If you really slow down the inflow and outflow rate, where I forget what the number was. It was like a quart per minute, or it was less than that. But I mean, so in other words, your total sparge time for a 5-gallon batch would be somewhere around the neighborhood of half an hour, 45 minutes. You can get up to 90% efficiency, where you can almost see the concentration gradient in the grain bed, and the water just flow through.
But you don't even really want to do that.
No, you really
so in actuality,
really don't want to do that.
Any of these techniques is fine. Batch sparging may be a little less efficient, but it's perfectly good for what we're trying to do. We're not trying to milk every last bit of sugar out of those grains.
Right.
We're just trying to make great beer. So batch sparging will do that. No sparging will do that. Fly sparging will do that. Right.
However, if you're getting 50% efficiency, that I would say that
wake up
there's room for improvement.
Right. Yeah, if you're below, I think the BYO articles that you and I write, we're told to assume a 65% efficiency, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're below 65, I'd say work on it.
Yeah,
65 is fine, 70's fine, 75's fine, 80's fine. You should be in that range, 60 to 80. If you're not in that range, then work on it a little bit. And well, why don't we take a break, and when we come back, we'll talk about what kind of false bottoms, bags, filter pads, whatever you put at the bottom to kind of strain this stuff out. Back after this.
Okie doke.
Keep your carboy cap on. This is Brew Strong. We'll be right back.
Nico, listen, our lawyers said that we had to do this for 1 hour, and after this, we don't have to talk to each other for 3 more months to the next meeting.
Kids, come on, let's get out of here.
I'm supposed to have more lines. I'm the professional. Hey, it's Sully.
And I'm Nico.
And we opened the 21st Amendment 9 years ago at 563 2nd Street in San Francisco, just 2 blocks from Giants Park, to make great beer and have a great time doing it.
That's right, because to us, the 21st Amendment is more than just the right to make beer. It's the right to experiment, to be innovative, and just do things differently. And so now, we're putting our craft beer in cans.
That's right, cans. You can find our world-famous Hell or High Watermelon Wheat Beer and Brew Free or Die IPA throughout California and Alaska.
And now it's also available on draft at select accounts in the Bay Area.
So next time you're at your local neighborhood pub or good beer store, be sure to ask for 21st Amendment in cans.
Because everyone likes it in the can.
Tasty crack cans.
Tasty crack cans.
White Labs, your source for maltose mowing monsters, announces the White Labs Platinum lineup for 2009. Looking for out-of-the-ordinary yeast to make the best beer possible? The Platinum strains from White Labs are only available for a limited time and make your homebrew stand out. Through February, find Australian Ale, Essex Ale, and Dusseldorf Alt yeast. March and April, it's Nottingham Ale, Abbey 4, and Mexican Lager yeast. And May through June, don't miss Premium Bitter Ale, Belgian Wit 2, and Belgian Bastogne Ale yeast. Keep up with all the great yeasts in the White Labs Platinum program at whitelabs.com, where you can also join the White Labs Customer Club. Brew with the freshest and most unique yeast with the White Labs 2009 Platinum strains. White Labs. It's all in the vial.
In the past year, the Brewing Network has been able to add 2 new shows, expand our studio capabilities and quality, and bring more beer information home to you than ever before. In no small part, this is due to subscribers like you. Thank you from all of us at the Brewing Network. Without your monthly support of any denomination, we could not bring you the very best in live beer radio like Can You Brew It, Brew Strong, and the Sunday Session. Haven't signed up yet? Join your fellow brewers in the BN Army. Sign up today at thebrewingnetwork.com for a recurring donation as little as $2 a month. Besides all the great live radio you'll support, every subscriber is automatically entered in monthly raffles for amazing brew gear like a conical fermenter, a temperature control system, or your own draft setup. Become a part of the BN Army today.
You're listening to the Brewing Network.
Like the Lance Armstrong of the beer world. Except for that nut thing.
This is Brew Strong.
All right, we're talking Sparging on the Brewing Network. Brew Strong. All right, so John, just before the break, we were talking about, I don't know, something about Sparging.
Yep.
The beer's good tonight. We're kind of going to get into the equipment. False bottoms, manifolds, bags, filter pads. I've seen them all. The Charlie Papazian Zap Pap thing where you got a plastic bucket inside a plastic bucket and you drill a billion little tiny holes in it. Mm-hmm. So all those things work, I know, but why would I choose one over the other? What's the reasons for doing a false bottom or a copper manifold or a PVC manifold or
I think it's really
bag or
for home brewers. It boils down to convenience. You know, what's the most convenient for you?
Mm-hmm. And that might be cost, right?
Right. It might be cost. It might be availability. It might be, it might be an inspiration you had, or seeing a friend's system that you want to copy, or seeing on the internet that you read about and you want to copy. There's really 2 kinds. Three. Okay, 3 kinds.
No, 4.
Yeah, really. There's the false bottom, which is the most uniform in terms of, you're presenting a uniform, homogeneous area for draining across the entire grain bed.
Mm-hmm. And that could be little holes in a piece of perforated stainless, or it could be that triangle steel that's put into slots in a pro system. Anything perforated like that across the entire surface. Yeah.
The Phil's false bottoms are real nice. I mean, they're a perforated, plastic sheet. Mm-hmm. They fit well in the round coolers.
Although it doesn't cover the entire bottom, does it?
No, but you cover most of the bottom and you're there. Mm-hmm. Same with if you, in a Sankey keg or a converted keg, if that's what or a brew pot, if you're mashing and lautering one of those, get a false bottom that covers 90% of the bottom, and you've got a very uniform system.
I'll tell you, our great sponsor, More Beer, they actually have those false bottoms, not in plastic, but they have them in stainless. Those little domed false bottoms, they got them actually in stainless, so you can pick that up at morebeer.com. Good stuff. Anyways, continue.
And a false bottom is real nice for, like I said, getting a real uniform rinsing of the grain bed and a real uniform collection from the grain bed. The danger, as I mentioned earlier, is that if you open the valve wide open, you also have a lot of area to pull water from the grain bed with, and you tend to compact the grain bed. Now, if you go to the second system, which is a slotted pipe manifold, you can have a single pipe running down the length of your grain bed, and that'll work. But you're not going to get flow from the grain out at the edges of the mash tun. It's the wort doesn't like to travel horizontally to the pipe. It travels, basically gravity downwards. And I've done studies in an aquarium with food coloring that show me that you get like a 35, 40 degree gradient, convergence coming to that single pipe manifold. If you put more pipes on the manifold to cover more of the grain bed area, then you will rinse more uniformly, and you can approach a false bottom in terms of efficiency, in terms of uniformity of rinsing of that grain bed. The other type of manifolds, or the Sparging system or lautering system, is what's called like a bazooka screen, a stainless steel screen, stainless steel mesh that forms a single tube or a single ring that you drain from. And there again, the same hydrodynamic laws apply, where you're going to get convergence of flow, angling of flow to that collection area, and you may lose out on rinsing the grain out at the sides of the grain of the cooler, or your whatever your mash tun is. But you can still easily get 70% efficiency out of a system like that, out of a single pipe or single screen. You can get 70% efficiency.
Mm-hmm. Well, and how about I've seen people use those large nylon painter's bags. It's a mesh bag that fits like inside a bucket. I've seen people use the Zap Pap thing, where they drill a bunch of holes in one bucket and stick it inside another bucket. And then also I've seen what's essentially filter pads, and they lay a single pipe down in the bottom, and they put a filter pad over the top of it, filter pad that fills the entire mash tun, and then the grain sits on top of it, and you get perfectly crystal clear wort out of it.
Yeah. A friend of mine and I years ago did a study where if you look in the appendix of How to Brew, you'll see different manifold systems and comparison of different lautering systems. And we figured out that if you simply drilled a hole in the side of the bucket, and in other words, you didn't have any kind of screen or anything at all, you simply collected all the wort from a hole in the side of the bucket, you could get 55% efficiency out of that. Mm-hmm. So the more you do to distribute your collection area, the more you'll improve on that. Now, if you use a grain bag system with a wort collection tube underneath that will work very well if you have a way of unrestricting the flow. That is, holding that grain bag above the tube, so that you have better ease of flow underneath the grain bag than you do inside the grain bag. If the grain bag, in other words, if the grain bag is sitting flat on the bottom of the bucket, and this tube just goes, is resting on the bottom of the bucket also, and the grain is, has flattened itself and flattened the bag out, so, kind of contouring itself to that tube laying on the bottom of the bucket, you're going to get essentially that 55%, because all the flow has to converge through the grain bed to get to the opening of the tube. However, if you are able to lift that bag up, so now you have some free space under the bag, some no grain bed, just free liquid that can flow to the tube, Now you've got a false bottom system, and you're going to get much better efficiency out of that, approaching 90% uniformity. So that's the caveat to using the screen bag approach. Mm-hmm. Is you want to unrestrict that flow to your collection tube.
Okay. One last equipment question before we turn to questions from the chat room. How big a mash lauter ton do you need in order to sparge, say, 20 pounds of grain? Like your average 10-gallon batch of average beer.
Oh gosh, I've got equations on how to brew to address that. But for a standard 10-gallon GOT cooler, these round beverage coolers that you see in Home Depot and so on, these orange cylindrical 10-gallon coolers, I believe you can fit
about 40 quarts. That's an average.
Yeah, right. I believe you can fit 18 pounds of grain in there at I think it's 1.25 quarts per pound. Mm-hmm. So that'll get you up to about 1075 in terms of gravity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got about a 14-gallon mash tun, and I can put about 30 some odd pounds of grain in there before I top it out, and that's enough to do. I can do box and stuff. 10 gallons a bock type of thing with that.
Yeah. So,
it's about 10 gallons get you about 20 pounds. It's close.
Right.
And, you can always top up with a little DME. Keep yourself, do like Mike McDole does, Tasty McDole. Have yourself a bag of DME, the ultra-light DME, dry malt extract. And then if you find yourself a little short or your recipe requires more than your mash tun will hold, just add the DME in place of some of the base grain. Just add it to your brew kettle and dial yourself in just off of that, and you're fine. You're really not going to notice a whole lot of flavor difference.
Right.
Anything else you want to add about sparging before we hit the chat room here?
No, I think that covers all the things I had in mind.
Okay.
So let's see what some questions are.
All right. Chat room's hanging out. They've got a couple quick questions. First one for you, Palmer. It's about your book. You know that one you wrote, How to Brew?
Yeah. I
don't recall.
Yeah, it's that one. Jay-Z doesn't remember it. No, Wood's in the chat room, and he says, hey, I used those 10-gallon orange coolers and batch sparge on a B3 1550-esque rig with a pump and a false bottom. So... Palmer, if I take out the false bottom and replace it with a stainless braid, like is in your appendix, can we batch sparge then?
Yes. But you can batch sparge with that false bottom, too.
Yes.
Well, they do, right. Yeah. I think he's just thinking about replacing it and wondering if he can keep batch sparging.
Oh, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can... The one caveat with stainless steel braids is you want to make sure they don't collapse.
Okay.
Because if they collapse, then you really restrict flow, and you want them, when you're stirring your grain and so on, and that braid's down the bottom, you don't want to catch it with the paddle and rip it off the spigot, the pipe. Because that's happened to me, and that's annoying.
So really,
you hate to rip your spigot off your pipe.
Yeah.
It
kind of sounds like a downgrade to me to replace the false bottom.
I would stick with the false bottom. The false bottom's better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Does he say what his problem is with the false bottom?
Well, I think he's wondering about efficiency, and I don't know that he's having a problem with it, but his follow-up was, if we did replace it and then we could batch sparge with the stainless steel, what would the efficiency look like? He says right now they're getting about 74.5%.
Yeah, efficiency will go down.
He says they're getting 74.5% fly sparging.
Yeah. Efficiency will go down.
Okay.
They're going to have lower efficiency.
Okay.
Yeah. You can easily, like I said, get 90% efficiency fly sparging if you slow down. If you're getting 75% right now,
that's fine.
Haven't I heard you say that's fine, Jamil?
Yeah, why change?
Yeah. I would stick with what you have. The the braid really isn't going to buy you anything. Maybe they're concerned about foundation water but if they're getting 75% now, they're good.
But even that foundation water is really no problem. Okay, so foundation water is that water that's beneath your false bottom, before the grain. So you got your bottom of your mash tun. You've got a plate. Underneath that plate, on mine it's only like 3/4 of an inch, half an inch high. So the water underneath there is foundation water. On the more recent More Beer systems are like an inch and a half high. That water is really no problem. Don't even worry about that. You don't need to count that into your calculations. Just leave it in there, and you do your mash. When you go to sparge, nice slow, steady sparge. All that water underneath there, it's got the sugars in it. It'll run out, and it'll eventually get replaced with the thinner sparge water sugars. So not a problem. Slow and easy, and false bottom should work quite well.
Mm-hmm. All right, and last question from the chat about this tonight is Bike Foolery is in the chat room, and he wants to know what you two think about the brew in a bag technique, where he says it's a very thin mash and there's no sparge. Have either one of you used this? Do you have any thoughts about the brew in a bag technique?
I've used it or trialed it, and it works. There's I've talked with a lot of brewers in Australia that use it. Maybe I'm just a beer geek and a techno geek, but I really don't see a reason to use the beer in the bag technique unless you're severely restricted on equipment or space.
And I think that was the case with Bike, as I saw him chatting in there. Is it is an equipment, a wife, and a space problem. He's having. So, is it? Can you get a good? Can you get good efficiency? Do you think it's a? Yeah.
Like I said, if you raise the bag up off the bottom so that, or in the case of the beer brew in a bag system, you're lifting the bag out and draining your wort into your tun. And people have expressed concerns about the lack of the Vorloff step, extra lipids in the beer, extra protein in the beer, potential oxidation of the beer. A good, healthy, vigorous fermentation is going to clear up any worries you have of hot side aeration and oxygen before the boil at that stage. So it works, and brewers in Australia report good clarity. Go for it. If you've got a little more space, then you might want to do it the way we do it. I don't know. It's up to you.
I'd leave you all with this one thought that it's very, very easy to make wort. You could do a lot of really crazy things, and it'll all just work out just fine. It's really not a problem, and the quality of the wort will be very high. It's like the grains want to turn into wort, and a good fermentation, like John's saying, will solve a lot of ills in production of wort. As long focus on the fermentation, don't worry so much. If you're looking at buying equipment, buy it to control your fermentation, like fermentation temperature, which we're going to talk about in the next show. And
good point.
If you're listening live, stay tuned. You'll get to hear about controlling your fermentation temperature, not necessarily why, but how you go about it. What's all the tricks and techniques for getting good fermentation temperature control. So let me kind of recap here. Sparging is rinsing the sugars out of the grain into the boil kettle, and that's what your yeast are going to ferment. So it's an important step. But there's several methods: fly sparging or continuous sparging, batch sparging or no sparging, and all of them work just great. You don't have to really worry about which one you do. Do whichever one's most comfortable for you, because you really don't have to worry about efficiency. Efficiency, as long as you're in that 60 to 80% range, you're good. It's not a problem. If you're outside that range, then maybe it's an issue. So it's a big juicy target there, and most of the techniques you'll use will get you in that range, and you'll be just fine. You could use any number of pieces of equipment. The more like a false bottom your equipment is, the higher the efficiency you can get. The slower you go, the more efficiency you get. Again, efficiency isn't the end-all, be-all. It's really, about work quality. You want to stop when you're, before you get to a certain level as far as the remaining sugars. 3-4 Plato, and you're fine. You recirc before you start, and then you slowly run the wort out. It's going to take you maybe half an hour to an hour for a 5 to 10 gallon batch. And let's see, pH, you can adjust the sparge water, might be overkill. Temperature, you're going to be around the 170 range if you can. It just helps things be more viscous and flow more easily, and it's easier to rinse the sugars out if you have the water hot. But, if it's just warm water, that'll work too. Other than that, you don't need any adjustments on your water. And if you get a stuck sparge, if you're running it out too fast, stop, close the valves, if everything stops running out, and, stir up your grain and, recirculate again, and you'll be just fine. You'll be off and running again. So sparging really isn't that difficult, and it's very similar to steeping grains, the mash. So if you haven't gone all grain, and you're interested in it, and you got the space and the time, it can be a lot of fun. And it's really not difficult at all to make a good wort from the mash. And like I said, we're coming up on another Brew Strong show where we're going to talk about fermentation temperature control. In the meantime, why don't you cruise over to www.morebeer.com. Check out our great sponsor. They got lots of really interesting gear. That's where I bought all my equipment, and that's the equipment that I've been using for brewing. And I really love it. Good guys, good products, good shipping, good service. Love them to death, and they help keep this show going. So make sure you let them know how much you appreciate that. Also, if you get a chance, there's that donate button. You want to keep this show going, go to the homepage, thebrewingnetwork.com, and there's a donate. $2 a month actually gets you in a raffle that More Beer provides. They're providing great gear, and you can win, like, people won a sculpture this month. So lots of cool stuff that they give away. Also, check out the store. And there's shirts, hats. There's Brew Strong shirts, which I really love. And
BN anniversary shirts, special edition.
Oh, yeah.
And BNA4 commemorative glasses. So lots of special edition stuff that's never going to be here again.
Lots of good stuff that you can get in the store. And it all goes to the bottom line of the Brewing Network and keeps shows like this and the Sunday Session and Can You Brew It going. So, if you get a chance, check that out. Until then, keep brewing, keep experimenting, and brew strong.
Brew strong, everybody.